Coming up in today's newscast, it looks like we finally know which Israeli city will host Eurovision 2019. A bombshell recording adds evidence to the indictment against the Prime Minister's wife. And how did Israelis celebrate International Yoga Day? With 701 downward-facing dogs in Jerusalem.
It's looking like it's a done deal, my friends. We've just learned that Eurovision 2019 will most likely end up in Tel Aviv after all. A top official in the finance ministry has just told reporters that Tel Aviv's convention center is the only venue in the country that meets all of the requirements for the show. And that's according to reports. Jerusalem isn't even in the running for hosting duties after all.
Wonder Woman, don't you ever forget, you're divine and he's about to regret.
This news doesn't come as a complete shock. Last year's Eurovision saw some 18,000 spectators come from all over the world, and the convention center in Tel Aviv is the only stadium with enough seats to accommodate such a huge crowd. The entire production itself is also a massively expensive effort, which requires round-the-clock work, rehearsals, and preparations 7 days a week, including Shabbat, which is one big reason why production would be problematic in Jerusalem. Though Israel has held Eurovision in Jerusalem in the past, things have changed both in terms of scope and in politics. Israeli politicians were initially adamant that the show be held in Jerusalem, because Israel sees the holy city as its capital. But in light of President Trump's decision to relocate the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, fierce political opposition has reignited the debate over Jerusalem. This all came to a head earlier this month when Argentina canceled a friendly soccer match with the Israeli national team, after the Knesset moved the match from Haifa to Jerusalem. Political division and alleged backdoor deals within the Israeli Culture Ministry eventually caused Argentina to cancel. The government clearly wanted to avoid a potential repeat with Eurovision 2019. All the more reason we can probably expect to see next year's party in Tel Aviv.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has just introduced a new bill addressing ultra-orthodox conscription in the IDF. Following last year's High Court ruling, the government needs to pass a new bill within the next 2 months. But the contentious issue of Haredi enlistment in the army has proven quite difficult to negotiate. And ILTV's Aaron Porce joins us with more on this topic. So, Aaron, first off, what's in PM Netanyahu's bill?
Netanyahu's proposal is essentially the same proposal that we heard coming from the Defense Ministry, and it's backed by Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman as well. If passed, it would require yeshivas or Jewish seminaries to meet annual quotas for the military draft. It would also impose financial sanctions on any yeshiva that fails to meet that quota, with increasingly larger sanctions every year for as long as the yeshiva comes up short. Right-wing religious parties, however, obviously, which have a controlling majority in the coalition, are of course very opposed to the deal, and they're basically opposed to anything that isn't full military exemption, though. And they're making all sorts of threats, including leaving the coalition entirely, to get their way. Take a look.
יש לנו בעיה קשה עם הגיוס של בני הישיבות. מאיימים עלינו שלא ייתנו תקציבים. מה אנחנו חיים לפי תקציבים מהגויים האלה? צריך לעמוד על המשמר, שתלמידים ילמדו בחשק וילמדו תורה ויעלו רק בתורה. אנחנו לא נשלח אפילו אחד לצבא.
So here's a question. Without hope of passing the draft legislation, why would Netanyahu push it to a vote?
First off, in part it's to probably try to meet the deadline to find a compromise on this issue. The High Court originally ruled that the Haredi draft exemptions violated the concept of equality, and then they gave the Knesset a year to pass something else. The other reason is likely because it seems like the best compromise at the moment, and even Orthodox parties may end up letting the bill pass the first reading so that they can add amendments along the way, and potentially even, deal the court's September deadline.
Well, whether or not this deal is, the best compromise, I guess we'll have to find out, especially with the first vote coming up as soon as next week. But what about other bills? The Orthodox parties have their own, and there must be more, right?
Correct. But as I said earlier, the Haredi proposals basically maintain the status quo. They redefine Torah study as a form of national service, and this is unlikely to gain enough support in the Knesset to pass. As for other bills, there is another proposal that I know of, which is being presented by Knesset member Mossi Raz from Meretz. and it seems to legally be the most equal option. But again, it's one of the most radical, and that's to do away with any military conscription altogether. The argument is that, as it is, less than 50% of the country actually gets drafted. And with a volunteer army, you'd supposedly have better pay and benefits for soldiers and a more professional military. But again, with a culture in Israel that heavily includes collective and individual military experiences, it'd be pretty revolutionary for this to gain enough traction in the government.
All right, well, we have a lot to focus on ahead of the vote. Thanks for filling us in on the details, Aaron.
Thanks.
The ballots are in, and it looks like Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan will now continue with his presidency. Following the landslide victory, the incumbent leader and his party are now even more strongly set in the government, though opposition parties are complaining about the conduct of the vote count. The biggest question in Israel, however, is how relations will be affected. Returning to the studio with the answer is founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
So what are your initial reactions to Erdogan's victory as president and in parliament?
Well, let me confess that back in the 1990s, I was a very strong proponent of close Turkish relationships. In fact, I even wrote a joint article with someone who was the deputy commander of the Turkish armed forces and was the person who arrested Erdogan when he was mayor of Istanbul and was later arrested by Erdogan himself. I also hosted the former head of the Secret Service, Turkish Secret Service here. So I must say that Turkey has undergone a complete metamorphosis. The Turkey of the 1990s is not the Turkey today. The only thing they have in common is their geographical position. Turkey back then was a secular democracy with a Western orientation. Today it's completely different. It's no longer looking westward. It's undergoing an increasing process of Islamization. And I think, in principle, the future for Israel, barring surprises, is bleak. And I think this also underlines the short-sighted, in my opinion, if I may say so, imbecilic attempt at rapprochement with Turkey, because the relationships will be defined not by what Israel does, but by what Turkey has become.
Now, Erdogan has been in power now for 15 years. Before that, he was barred from politics and thrown in jail. The question is, how did Turkey get to where it is today? How did Erdogan do it?
Well, I must admit, this just shows what a formidable opponent Erdogan is, because as you say, 15 years ago, he was in jail and banned from politics, and he's managed to come back from that. Not only does that, he's completely defanged the Turkish army. People should recall that not long ago, the Turkish army had a constitutional duty to keep Turkish secular and Western orientated, and Erdogan has undone that completely. In the past, the Turkish government actually overthrew governments that were leaning towards an Islamic orientation. So this is an extraordinary achievement by Erdogan, and it just shows what a formidable foe he is.
Well, it's certainly going to be interesting to see, what approach Israel takes to him being, re-elected here.
Sure.
But thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sherman. We have not one but two shocking developments related to the indictment of the Prime Minister's wife, Sarah Netanyahu, who allegedly misused state funds systematically. The car of the former manager of the Prime Minister's former residence, Meni Naftali, has just been torched, and it was Naftali who successfully sued Sarah Netanyahu for abuse and has provided testimony in these new charges.
Police suspect a deliberate arson attack. On top of that, excerpts of a tape recording documenting the alleged crimes have just been leaked to the press. The recordings were made by Netanyahu's former advisor, Nir Hefetz, who has since turned state's witness and testified against the prime minister in at least 2 corruption investigations. The tape was apparently made back in 2010 and documents a conversation between himself and attorney Shlomit Barnea Farago, the legal advisor of the Prime Minister's office. The two openly discuss what seems to be an ongoing plan to deceive journalists, as well as investigators, in order to, quote, protect the Prime Minister so that he doesn't get involved in these things. Regarding Sarah Netanyahu, Hefetz says that, quote, I think she does all kinds of tricks in the hotel bills abroad to hide all kinds of expenses. He goes on to suggest that the Prime Minister's wife illicitly packs up to 4 or 5 suitcases of dirty personal laundry for trips abroad, which she brings specifically so that the foreign hotels can dry clean them. The PM's attorney then says, quote, but that's misuse of public funds, bringing laundry you're not even going to use there so it can just be cleaned. They go on to discuss allegedly illicit gifts as well as cover stories seemingly used to evade journalists' questions. Both the Prime Minister and his wife have consistently maintained that they've done nothing wrong in any of these alleged corruption allegations, and that nothing will come from any of the investigations.
England's Prince William is moments away from his arrival in Israel for a historic state visit. This marks the first time that a member of British royalty has visited the Holy Land at the request of Her Majesty the Queen. LTV's Brett Allen Smith is here now with more on this unprecedented visit. So, Brett, give us a rundown of the royal itinerary.
With pleasure, Natasha. So Prince William's plane is literally about to touch down at Ben Gurion Airport right now. He's coming immediately from a full day in Jordan, a couple days actually. So today will probably be more like a half-day evening tour in Tel Aviv. Tomorrow is kind of the first real day of actual state visits. Prince William is going to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Cleveland in Jerusalem. He's got a number of sites to see there in Jerusalem, which includes a tour of Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum. He'll also meet with Holocaust survivor Henry Foner. Foner was granted asylum to England after the Holocaust. Thanks to the Kinder Transport Initiative after World War II, so that's quite a significant visit.
And I understand that there's already been a change to today's schedule, correct?
Correct, a small change, yeah. So originally the plan was that Prince William was going to visit a tree at Yad Vashem, which honors his great-grandmother. She's actually recognized as one of the righteous among the nations for saving Jewish lives during the Holocaust. So he's going to skip the visit to this tree, and instead he's going to honor her memory by visiting her grave, which is in the Church of Mary Magdalene in Jerusalem.
Now, these state visits are, of course, extremely scheduled in advance to make the most use of time. Yeah. And Yad Vashem regrets that the prince won't visit the tree, but it looks like they understand that his schedule is quite demanding.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think everyone, wants a piece of Prince William on this trip, and that's probably because the UK has had such a hands-off approach to the Middle East over the last 7 years to begin with. I mean, this trip isn't explicitly political like that, but the British government was very clear about one thing when it released that official itinerary concerning the trip to Jerusalem, which it lists as part of the, quote, occupied Palestinian territories. That is how the UK and most of the rest of the world do see Jerusalem, or at least, East Jerusalem. Politics may play into this in a kind of different way, though, I will say, because after Brexit, of course, the UK is going to be leaving the European Union. So this trip may be a symbolic gesture to kind of show that London still wants a policy foothold in foreign affairs, I think a good guess to make.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it makes sense. Prince William will spend the next few days in Israel before traveling to the Palestinian Authority, where he'll meet with PA President Abbas. And by that time, we may already know the details of U.S. President Trump's still unseen plan for an Israeli-Palestinian peace deal. But maybe the trip could turn into more than just a normal regional tour. Who knows, right? I know you're very excited, Brett, about Prince William being here. You've been talking about it all week.
Israelis are extremely excited. You see, I saw someone this morning wearing pants with checkered British flags on them. So I think that goes... Are you going to try to get
a pair of those yourself?
I'm insulted you don't even think I have a pair of those at home, underneath this very table.
I know. Well, obviously this is a very big deal for the state of Israel that we have a member of the royal family arriving today. And, well, Brett, we're going to be looking to you for more information about this since you're the #1 fan, all right? Okay.
Spot on.
All right. When arriving on the scene of an accident or attack, one of the hardest things to assess is how to get urgent medical care to those who need it most first. Well, Israeli company Cardioscale may have found a way to help first responders prioritize and save lives. And now it's even being awarded for its impact on triage care.
Within seconds, Cardioscale's new cardiovascular reserve index device can accurately assess the dynamics of a patient's blood flow, predicting deterioration in patients without any invasive procedures. An increased heart rate, blood pressure, abnormal cardiac output, and artery pressure are each measured with this invention. The device then tells trauma scene users what patients need to be treated first and who needs to be evacuated from the area immediately. Thanks to this invention in a competition that aims to identify cutting-edge technologies that can combat terror, Israeli startup Cardioscale managed to beat out an astonishing 210 entries. The Ganei Tikva-based company won the 2018 Combating Terrorism Technology Startup Challenge, held by the U.S. Department of Defense's Combating Terrorism Technical Support Office. The company received a nice $100,000 check at the competition, but best of all, it will all go to saving the lives of those who find themselves tragically in harm's way.
Jerusalem may be a bedrock of ancient history, but the city is still always changing. And now Jerusalem's about to dive into a totally new kind of journey. Thanks to an organization called Ale Israel, the city's about to get Israel's first one-of-a-kind hydrotherapy pool, which will hopefully give nonverbal children the power to express their emotions for the very first time. Hydrotherapy is a concept as old as time itself, so in a way it's only natural that Jerusalem would be home to the country's first ever therapeutic pool of its kind. Ale Jerusalem's unique augmented alternative treatment is designed to help kids who can't express their emotions through their words. The customized therapy gives them new communication tools by helping them express their emotions using special boards that are strategically placed around the pool. The waters are heated to around 35 degrees Celsius, allowing patients to fully relax their muscles. The idea here is to both relieve pain and encourage healthy blood flow throughout the body. Hydrotherapy succeeds where other treatments fail because patients with physical disabilities can move in the water in ways that they just can't while standing up on land. The new pool is large enough to fit about 16 people at a time, 8 patients and 8 caregivers, and the program's cost will be covered by national insurance. And Jerusalem residents will also be able to book therapy sessions as well. All right, Israeli developers at IBM's headquarters in Haifa have been toiling away for years on a crazy new artificial intelligence project. And now the public has just gotten its very first live demo of the AI in action. The system, known as Project Debater, is the first of its kind, a computerized artificial intelligence that can hold a back-and-forth public debate against a human speaker. And now IBM has just put Project Debater to the test in San Francisco.
The system went head-to-head against 2 of Israel's former debate champs in a showdown that can only be described as totally futuristic. While AIs in the past have been able to masterfully play chess and even beat humans in Jeopardy, the parameters of a debate are a tad more complex. The system needs to support facts while reading the room, supported with the human flourishes of making a convincing argument. You've got to make careful snap decisions, counter your opponent, and balance humor, confidence, assertion, and performance to get your point across. That's a ton of humanity to expect from a computer. But it turns out this debate showdown was a much closer call than you'd expect. While the Israeli debaters narrowly squeezed out the win, the decisive points boiled down to how the arguments were delivered. But in terms of the facts themselves, Project Debater was top dog, flipping many spectators' minds on the topics. But the fact that the system could even hold everyone's attention for a 20-minute debate is the real bottom line here. Maybe the computer's jokes were a little lame, but for Israeli developers, this is a very promising indicator that a years-long dream has truly become a reality.
New companies, old companies, and everything in between, they typically run on sales. Well, Israeli company Incentive Solutions has been innovating the world of commissions and sales for years now. And their flagship product, Jupi, has been at the heart of it all. Here with more is the Global Sales Director at Incentive Solutions, Hila Phobes. Thanks for joining us. So what is Jupi?
So Jupi is a cloud-based commission management solution. It's a sales performance solution which really helps organizations to grow, simplify, and control. Growing their sales, simplifying the entire commission calculation process, and controlling company budget, controlling the commission budget.
Where does the name Jupi come from?
So Jupi is just a name that our CEO, along with some of the developers, they wanted to connote something light, meaning user-friendly. Capabilities are all very rich and robust, but the name needs to sort of make it seem that it's a touch of a button and very user-friendly, so Jupi.
Interesting.
Jupi. Catchy. And
all right, so who benefits the most from Jupi?
So Jupi really benefits all departments in an organization, but really for the most part, it helps the salespeople because it gives them tools which allow them to grow to basically get their numbers up and sell. Transparency, so on their mobile, they're getting all their commission information. There's gamification and competition that they can have. And it gives them prescriptive analytics, so it lets them know what should I focus on, what should I sell in order to reach my next commission.
Interesting. So where is Jupi available right now?
Jupi is available, we're a global company. We're a Gartner surveyed best of breed organization. We're in all verticals globally. Some of Israel's leading organizations are clients, and we're also in the Far East, in Europe, in America.
Very cool. So what is next for the company? What is the hope here?
So really, we're just, we're growing. We're always, from where we were 16 years ago until where we are now, we're just, obviously we're cloud-based, multi-tenant platform. We're growing our sales all over the world. and helping organizations really get those numbers up and simplify a very cumbersome and tedious process, which is calculating commissions.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us and telling us about this platform. Obviously, sales are fundamental to a organization that wants to succeed, right? So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
When it comes to cigarettes, it looks like Israel has a real problem. 25% of the population over the age of 15 smokes. And now the Israeli Health Ministry is picking up tobacco restrictions with hope that locals will start putting down their cigarettes. Back on June 11th, the Knesset held an official no smoking day, but the event certainly didn't go as planned when it was revealed that sales of loose tobacco have risen by over 9% during the course of 2016 to 2017. The reason? Well, Israel's taxes on loose tobacco and water pipes are significantly lower than the taxes on cigarettes. The Knesset's Economic Affairs Committee is trying to fight back and has even approved a crackdown on smoking in public places like concert and event halls, sports venues, and parking lots. But the impact has yet to be seen. In Israel, men 15 years and older are smoking 41% more than men in comparably developed nations. Israeli women are smoking 20% more. And the issue is even more prevalent in the Israeli army, with 36% of Israelis finishing their services as smokers. In fact, the IDF even gives 7-minute breaks for soldiers in combat units throughout the day, which is one of the reasons that many Israelis claim they've started smoking. The Ministry of Health says smoking on all bases will soon be banned with the exception of commander-designated smoking areas. Likud Knesset member Yehuda Glick has been a large force behind the movement against cigarette smoking in Israel. Just 2 weeks ago, he announced that he was embarking on a hunger strike until the Israeli government made reforms. His strike ended once the Knesset finally passed a law forbidding the advertising of tobacco products, but smoking certainly still remains a deadly issue in the state of Israel. Speaking of making healthier decisions, Israel was a literal dream for yogis this week. Thousands of people joined together across the country to take part in International Yoga Day by spreading out colorful yoga mats designed to imagine the future of the state of Israel.
That's a look at Jerusalem right there. 701 beautiful mats were laid out across the grass just near the Old City in Jerusalem, forming a massive art piece called The Big Dream Jerusalem 2048. These yoga mats were literally dreamed up by residents of the disputed city, who were asked to imagine what they wanted to view outside their windows in 30 years from now. The founder of the Tel Aviv startup Dreamy.me then collaborated with local Jerusalem artist Amit Tranin to create a giant piece of artwork out of all of the dreams. The masterpiece was then sliced into hundreds of pieces and printed out on yoga mats that were spread out in the Holy City. Last year, the Big Dream project also took over Israel, only this time in Tel Aviv's Rabin Square, where 1,500 mats were laid out. International Yoga Day is a pretty popular event here in Israel, and it's sponsored by the Indian Embassy in Israel. And don't worry, even if you don't have a colorful yoga mat of your own, the event also includes a variety of free yoga classes for the public.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Samru Ulpan, open to everyone.
And here comes our Hebrew word of the day. 701 Israelis just did 701 simultaneous downward-facing dogs for International Yoga Day. So today's word is gamish, which means flexible. So how does one become gamish or flexible anyhow? Well, start with yoga. Lots and lots of yoga. Some people are just born gamish, others need to stretch and exercise constantly to get nice and gamish. But remember guys, being gamish says a lot about your overall health. If you can bench press 1,000 kilos but can't even come close to touching your toes, you might want to work on getting gamish, before your skeleton literally explodes. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight will be clear and warm with a low of 73 or 23 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow should be clear, sunny, and warm again with little change in temperatures, and the high is expected to be around 85 or 29 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.61 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.